Today, I have the co-founder of one of the world's first lab-grown diamond companies. Her jewellery has been worn by the likes of Meghan Markle, and you might have recently seen her on Dragon's Den, where she secured investment from Steven Bartlett. I am very pleased to welcome Jessica Warch of Kimai.
So lab-grown diamonds are chemically and physically identical to mined diamonds, but without the social and environmental impact of mining. So what it means, it's basically kind of like a newly discovered mine. We often compare it to water in an iceberg or water in a freezer. It's a different environment, but the same results. It doesn't mean, it's not because we grow them in a lab that they're perfect. They come with their imperfections and inclusion, like a mined diamond, and they come with their certificate, like it's recognized as a diamond today. Even a diamond trader or certified gemologist can't tell them apart. So it's...
Oh, they can't tell them apart?
No, there's no way to tell them apart, yeah. In the US last year, 2 in 3 engagement rings were lab-grown. Yeah. So we've come a long way because we were like 0.2% of the market a few years ago. It's growing very fast. I think Europe is a bit slower than the US, but definitely getting there.
My name is Claudia Green, and this is She Did That, the podcast shining a spotlight on remarkable women who are breaking barriers and proving that greatness knows no gender. From female founders who have raised millions of pounds, the investors changing the landscape as we know it, to survivors of tragedy who have achieved the amazing, and many more. We will share the stories of these incredible women who will inspire and empower you. In order to support us and these women, please subscribe on your viewing or listening channel of choice so we can continue our mission of sharing the stories that should and need to be heard.
Today, I have the co-founder of one of the world's first lab-grown diamond companies. Her jewellery has been worn by the likes of Meghan Markle, and you might have recently seen her on Dragon's Den, where she secured investment from Steven Bartlett. I am very pleased to welcome Jessica Warch of Kimai. Thank you so much for being here, Jessica.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited. I can see that you're all blinged up.
Always.
All Kimai?
All Kimai.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I've already got my eye on a few pieces. So before we dive into Kimai, would love to get a bit of background on you, where you grew up, studied, and then kind of your journey into becoming an entrepreneur and the co-founder of a very successful jewellery brand. So let's start from the beginning. Where were you born?
Perfect. So I was born in Antwerp in Belgium. Grew up there my whole life. Moved to the UK when I turned 18. Took a gap year, but then kind of like studied in London. Studied business and finance, and then got into trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. I started at Matches Fashion, actually, just as an intern.
Yeah.
Then kind of like wanted to get more into the VC finance side of things, and then in a startup. So I was working for a peer here. As we mentioned, like I got bored quite quickly in a fixed job. Like I always wanted to have my own thing, but kind of like never wanted to start looking for it, more waiting for the right opportunity to arise. So I come from traditional diamond industry family. So in Antwerp, it's a diamond city of the world.
Like,
so yeah, that's where most of the diamond trade happens. So we always grew up around diamonds and jewelry. I was living with my best friend, who's my co-founder today. And we kind of like became more and more conscious of our impact, more conscious of our purchasing decisions, and we're looking at all kind of industry that were really evolving with our time. And the fine jewelry and diamond industry is probably one of the only one that hasn't changed over the past 100 years, from a traceability perspective, but also from a communication and marketing aspect. That's how Kimai came to life. We wanted to bring more transparency to the space, wanted to make the space more relevant to us as younger customer. And we started looking into alternative, and that's how we heard about lab-grown diamonds, and launched about 5 years ago now, with everyday pieces, meaning necklaces, earrings, bracelets, everything with 18 carats, recycled gold, and lab-grown diamonds. So that's how it all started.
So you kind of always knew that you wanted to be an entrepreneur before you even had an idea, and then kind of being with your best friend, you were kind of brainstorming.
I think the main thing is always like felt like, yes, I was going to do my own thing, but never knew. I think entrepreneur at the time wasn't as buzzy as it is today. So never knew what that really meant. But really kind of like saw an opportunity. I never thought I would get into business with my best friend. I think that specific business, we're very complementary. So she does design and production. I'm more of the business side. Like we really complement each other. So for that kind of like, it made sense.
Yeah.
So we didn't really brainstorm. We kind of like saw an opportunity when we felt the issue of the space and kind of like couldn't find any brand that was relevant to us. And that's how we started brainstorming around that project rather than like really looking for an opportunity.
Well, I guess it can kind of go either two ways if you work with your best friend. I'm trying to think what it would be like if I worked with my best friend. Like, could be catastrophic.
Yeah.
So it's risky. But then again, I've spoken to lots of founders where they didn't meet their co-founder until they were working with them. And, you know, they don't really know someone when you've worked with them a couple of years. So it's risky. And you see a lot of friction between co-founders. So actually, arguably, when it's someone that you know you can trust, like a sister or a best friend, it's probably safer.
I think it really depends person to person. I think like we've seen different scenarios where best friend doesn't work out or where people that don't know each other doesn't work out either. I think with us, and in general, I think like with co-founders, what is important is to be complementary. I think if you kind of have the same skills or really do the same thing in the company, that's where it can kind of bring some frustration and whatever happened afterwards. So yeah, for us, it really works. I know it's not for everyone. And definitely a lot of people were telling us in the early days, like, don't do it.
Yeah.
But it did work out. But I think that, again, the skills we have are very different.
Yeah.
We've really set clear roles for each of us. And that was really important.
So what are lab-grown diamonds?
So lab-grown diamonds are chemically and physically identical to mined diamonds, but without the social and environmental impact of mining. So what it means, it's basically kind of like a newly discovered mine. We often compare it to water in an iceberg or water in a freezer. It's a different environment, but the same results. It doesn't mean, it's not because we grow them in a lab that they're perfect. They come with their imperfections and inclusion, like a mined diamond, and they come with their certificate. Like it's recognized as a diamond today. Even a diamond trader or certified gemologist can't tell them apart. So it's...
Oh, they can't tell them apart?
No, there's no way to tell them apart, yeah.
That's really interesting. So if you've got like a giant lab-grown rock...
No one can tell the difference. There's only a specialized machine that will see the difference, but it's not 100% always correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
We don't want to inspire anyone for an insurance scam, but that's really interesting. And I guess when it comes to the actual diamond industry, I think a lot of people don't really know much about it. As in, you know, everyone loves diamonds, but they don't really think about where they come from or what the history behind them were. I think most people have seen the film Blood Diamond. Yeah. So that was a bit of a wake-up call. But you talk a lot about sort of the ethics behind it. Where does a diamond come from and where are kind of the unethical bits of that?
The diamond industry has always been controlled by big players that were very good at marketing and controlling what's being said and not being said, controlled pricing, controlled communication, everything around the space. I think with access to more information today, people start to realize more and more what it actually means getting a diamond, like a mined diamond. It's basically digging huge hole under earth to kind of like get even like a tiny stone. The working environments aren't safe. People that actually dig the diamond out of the earth aren't paid a fraction of what you're paying to get for your diamonds. So it was it is still like a very complex and complex space with so many middlemen, with so many controversies. I think like there's not enough information out there because they control information, but we're getting there.
Yeah. And are there any sort of key countries in the world where diamonds
Yeah, definitely. I guess like the classic one, it's like Africa, there's Canada, there's different ones, but I feel like the least safe ones are like in Africa.
In Africa, yeah. Well, that's what Blood Diamond
exactly
was about. And so for lab grown diamonds, how did you hear about lab grown diamonds yourself? I know you grew up around family who were in the diamond industry, but where did you first hear about lab grown diamonds?
So as I said, like we kind of like felt there was a gap in the space where we couldn't find any traceability, even by knowing diamond traders directly. So we started to look into the space, like why is it that there is such a lack of traceability? What are our options? What can we do to offer something that is more traceable and more transparent? That's how we heard about it. At the time, it was a very new concept. So there was very little information available, but kind of like started digging into it, and started to get interested and talking to labs and visiting labs and figuring out what it actually means, a lab grown diamond.
And when it comes, because obviously the price point's different when it's traditional diamond versus lab grown. Why is it that it's more affordable to have a lab grown diamond?
A few reasons. One, again, I'll always go back to like the space is controlled in the mine diamond space, meaning that the big player have bought all of their competitors in order to control price, because price is not set based on supply and demand. That's why it's so highly priced, and they've been really great at marketing it as a very rare piece that's going to take value over time, which I think today people realize that it's actually not true, but they've been controlling the space and were able to sell it as you think of a diamond today. And they're even the ones like why we buy an engagement ring with a diamond is thanks or due to them. With lab grown diamond, I feel like firstly it's basically like we go to the source directly, like we work with a lab, so like we don't go through the different middlemen compared to like a mine diamond. And also we finally want something that's more fairly priced. So yeah.
So if you got engaged, do you want a traditional diamond?
Never.
You want a lab grown diamond?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Noted boyfriend of Jessica. So let's get into like the business side of it. You bootstrapped the company yourself, you and your best friend. So that must have been really challenging because obviously you're living in London, you're away from your family, you're working in startups, so you're not paid that well either. How did you go from idea to putting something together, and what did that first version look like?
So we kind of like, while we were in our job, we started working on the product. For us, like the first step was like product, and then we had no clue about anything else. So we started working on the product. Once we had the product ready, we kind of like created a website, which is super easy nowadays on Shopify. And kind of like went from there. I quit my job before launching. My co-founder worked until it kind of buzzed. But that also meant that I left my flat. I was staying at friends. Like we kind of like went in that direction because definitely we had no money and not much saving because we were young and didn't work in like finance or those kind of jobs. And then kind of like launched it, didn't have a big strategy, just launched it with friends and family. And from there, tried to figure out how to get the word out there. And that's how 2 months after our launch, Meghan Markle was seen wearing our pieces.
Oh, I was going to mention that.
Yeah, and that kind of launched us. And so we were very lucky in a way where it didn't take too long for it to be launched. Once she wore it, we got a lot of sales, like a lot of things were coming into places and kind of like fundraised from there. So I guess like lucky, but kind of like try to build our luck, like in a way.
And just to clarify, Meghan Markle went on your website and paid for her purchase.
So how it works is basically we wanted to get on her. We tried to figure out people around her that are less mediatized, less not as big as she is and like easier to access. Started reaching out with cold emails. Then her team reached out to buy the pieces. Like she didn't go manually on the website to do it. But even then we didn't know if she would wear it or not, and it happened.
How did you find out? Was it just in
No, so
press?
like we knew she had the pieces, but kind of like didn't know what was going to happen. And then, like we were everywhere. Yeah, in press.
So your sales must have literally just gone like that.
Yeah.
That must have been so exciting.
Yeah. It was like shocking.
That's incredible. That's kind of the dream though, to have an influential figure
Definitely
wearing your pieces.
But you need to figure out how to get there.
Yeah, it's difficult because the PR route is so complicated to get people
But
to
you just
wear it.
just like hustling, cold emails, like just going through the.
Oh, it definitely takes a
different steps.
hustle.
Yeah.
So did that kind of, after that happened and sales increased, did that kind of change your plan with the business? Because obviously it fast tracked everything.
I think honestly we had no plan. So it didn't change. Like, of course, like you need to manage the business in a different way, but we didn't have any plan. We were just like, had no clue. We're super young, 25 or 24. I don't remember. 25 or 24. Anyways, young. Never really worked for like 2-3 years. Like, but what does that mean? And then kind of like, just were like, okay, let's do a brand and launch it and see how that goes. But we were hustlers. So we were just like figuring out things as it came. And we just like managed it that way, but there was no plan.
So obviously because you bootstrapped it and you didn't have any investment at the time.
No.
So you couldn't spend on marketing.
No.
Really. So was your approach kind of to rely more on the PR?
No, I think like we didn't spend on marketing at the time. We kind of like had that Meghan effect and buzzed and got a lot of money in through sales from that, then fundraised because we used that buzz to fundraise. So then we had the money, but didn't know what to do with the money either. And then kind of like started learning from there. Like you just learn, test and learn, definitely. And then COVID hit as well at the same time, like around the same time. So would you spend on marketing at that time? Like not really. So it's kind of like, we were just like figuring it out like one step at a time. But definitely like, you can't rely just on PR. You can't rely just on paid marketing. Like you need a mix of everything.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important thing that you mentioned. You fundraised and you didn't know what to do with the money, because a lot of people sort of brush over that period.
Yeah.
But it is a fair point. You raised this amount of money. I mean, how much did you raise?
1.2 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a pretty substantial amount of money, but a lot of people don't know where to spend that. So now you've come out the other side of that. Obviously, every business is different, but when it comes to sort of an e-commerce business, I say e-commerce, but you've got a physical store in London, soon in Paris as well. Where did you see most value when it came to money? Was it in hiring, marketing?
Hiring, I think, but we didn't do it because like I think it's super hard to attract talent when you're that young of a brand. Value was in like a mix of things. I think PR was a big thing for us because in the early days, education was key. Like we needed to educate customers on what lab-grown diamonds were. No one knew what those were. On top of it, like buying fine jewelry online was a very new purchase. So how do you build the trust with the customer? So I think for us in the early days was PR. And by PR, I mean like a mix of things. Like, being on Meghan Markle then brings you the right article, just like figuring out what you can tell press. And I think like that really kind of like also opened up the conversation around lab-grown, which we have something to say rather than just like we're selling beautiful jewelry, which I think is harder to talk about in press. But I would say PR actually.
PR is the most. Yeah. And how big is your team today?
We're still a small team. We're like 8 full-time and then work with freelancers.
And you're all female?
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, proper like girl boss vibes.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But I think it's also important because I've definitely spoken to a lot of founders who receive a large amount of money and assume that they need to build out this giant team. They're like, we need this specific marketing person, this specific marketing person.
If you have the experience, why not, right? We didn't have the experience, so we didn't really know. We kind of like were figuring it out along the way. It's hard to hire, so you'll make mistakes. So like if you don't really know where to start, it's tricky. I think like also something that we've learned is that you can do a lot with little. I think definitely your team is important. But don't rush into like the big people, big salaries, because without knowing really what you're getting into.
No, and I think that's the key. If you can keep your team like small
Lean,
and lean, then you're not spending all of the money coming back in on staff. Obviously, you can't avoid it with some businesses. They need huge teams.
It really depends on the business.
Yeah. Did you find it hard, Round? Because I know there are so many facets to your business, because obviously you're running website, you're running shops. Like there's a lot you need to know. Were there any kind of particular areas that you found particularly difficult throughout the process?
I think everything is difficult. So honestly, there's not something specific. I think like, again, we didn't have that much experience. So everything is a new challenge, and everything's something that we just figure out as we go, from hiring, from marketing, from opening a store. What does it mean? Like managing a team, managing stock, all of this. Everything is still hard. Like we're still figuring it out. So I feel like you'll never have all the answers, for sure not.
No, that makes sense. And I think it's always challenging, definitely when you've got younger entrepreneurs who don't have years and years.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you were working for a similar business before this. This is something brand new.
Yeah. I think it's challenging, but at the same time, like launching young means that you're unconscious, and in an unconscious way also enables you to launch. I think like if you're more conscious of like the risk and things like those, you won't launch as quickly with whatever we launched with. So I think it has its pros and cons.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because there are definitely founders who pre-launch want to make sure that they've mapped out every eventuality, spreadsheets, projections that never go to plan anyway. Whereas actually there's something to be said for let's launch it and then let's fail fast. Yeah. Try, test, and see what works.
Definitely.
So how many pieces did you launch with when you started?
20.
Okay. And how many pieces are there now?
I don't even know.
A lot.
Yeah, many more. Like, but not that crazy. Like maybe 120 or 150.
Okay, quite a lot. And the price ranges vary from
300 to 20,000.
Okay, I like that. Okay, and recently you appeared on Dragon's Den.
Yes.
Which is very exciting because I actually booked you in to come on the podcast before. I didn't even know you were going to be on Dragon's Den. I put my TV on. I was like, hey, I swear that's the girl that's coming on my podcast. Tell me about your experience with Dragon's Den.
So it was really, we didn't know what to expect, but actually turned out really well. I think it's a great platform. I think for younger brands, it's a great platform to definitely get in front of investors. For us, it's a great platform to gain visibility and kind of like educate customers. So like, again, our product is about education because of the lab grown aspect. So it gave us, really a platform to tell our story, kind of get feedbacks as well from the dragons, but definitely the visibility of it is a big part of it.
Yeah, because I mean, arguably you can raise investment from so many different places.
Yes and no. I guess for us, because we already have the experience, but for many small brands, they don't really know where to start. So that's a great starting point. But for us, it was like, definitely not for the money aspect.
No, because there must be some great PR. Did you see an increase? That's another interesting one. Did you see an increase in sales after you aired?
Definitely. So it does have an impact. Again, we didn't know how big of an impact it was going to have on sale because our product is expensive compared to the products that usually go on there. For us, it was education. Education was key instead of like straight sales.
Does he act as kind of an advisor?
Yeah, he's very approachable. He's very like smart. He knows how to build communities. He knows how to build brands. So definitely more as an advisor and like someone we can kind of knock on the door.
For anyone that wants to go on Dragon's Den, I mean, I watched Dragon's Den and I think that looks absolutely petrifying because like you're just hammered for answers and you see so many horror stories on there where they're like, I don't know the answer to that. What's your advice for anyone that wants to go on Dragon's Den?
I think like know your business. And as long as you know your business, it won't be challenging. I think the number part, there's a few numbers to learn. But besides this, it's like as long as you know your business, it should be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, congratulations anyway, because that's a big deal.
Thanks.
And you've been in the press quite a lot from that.
Yeah.
What's your plan now? Like what, because obviously you've raised more money now.
Yeah.
Where do you want Kimai to reach to, or you might not even know yet, but do you have like an overall goal?
So for us right now, the plan is like opening retail, scaling up retail. So we have one store in London, opening Paris, looking to open more. We sell pieces with high average order value, sell a lot of engagement rings. So definitely the next natural step is in-person interactions with the customers. But the goal is really to become the leader for bridal. So yeah, the Tiffany of our generation.
Oh, I like that. So do you think there's going to be quite a spike in people buying lab-grown engagement rings?
100%. In the US last year, 2 in 3 engagement rings were lab-grown. Yeah. So we've come a long way because we were like 0.2% of the market a few years ago. It's growing very fast. I think Europe is a bit slower than the US, but it's definitely getting there.
But it does make sense, you know, obviously there's the ethical side of it, but then also like you can get a really beautiful piece and it looks exactly the same as one that you might have had to spend £100,000 on.
Yeah, I think on top of the price, there's also, and what's the cost of getting that piece on your hand, you know, like the kind of social and environmental cost. So yeah, 100%. Like for me, it's a no-brainer. Of course, I'm biased, but yeah, definitely a no-brainer.
And do you think, I spoke to someone recently, actually, she just got engaged and I said, oh, I love your engagement ring. Where did you get it? And she said, well, you won't like this answer, but it's an interesting one in case anyone ever says it again. She said that he offered her a choice between lab-grown or Hatton Garden traditional diamond. And she said, I want something that I can pass down in generations in my family. So I chose traditional diamond, which obviously wasn't his preference because it's a lot more expensive. And I didn't know too much about it. So I said, oh, okay, fair enough. But there's no reason you can't pass down lab-grown diamonds generationally as well.
Why can't you? Yeah, why couldn't you? I feel like the main thing is the value, like the sentimental value of pieces is the piece itself rather than the stone. I think what we see is that customer care where the piece come from. Like, what does it mean? You want to pass it over to the next generation, but the impact it had on other people is huge. And it's the exact same thinking with lab grown. Definitely, we want jewelry pieces to pass along to the next generation. That's kind of like the goal of most jewelry pieces. It really has a sentimental value linked to it. So we don't see it as different. It's similar, like completely the same.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that
there's still a lot of education. We're not there. Like the market hasn't shifted completely, but we're getting there 100%.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just don't know.
Yeah.
They think, oh, no, it's just cheaper and it does. But the truth is that a sentimental piece is a sentimental piece.
Yeah. And it's the same product. It's exactly the same product.
Yeah. And then when it comes to, you know, you hear people say, oh, I got my grandma's engagement ring. I mean, I've got my grandma's engagement ring. I would never sell it because it's completely sentimental. So it wouldn't matter if it was made out of string or the fact that it's a diamond.
For sure.
It still has sentimental value. But then there are like the other grandkids that can't wait to sell the diamond.
Yeah. I think like, again, like with the price point, like reselling, people have always been educated in a way that diamond is super rare. It takes value over time. I think people realize today that it's
true. Not super rare, is it?
And it doesn't take value over time. So yeah, you'll be able to resell it, but for a fraction of what you paid for it. And definitely lab-grown diamond, it's going to be less, but you've paid much less for it. So it's kind of like proportionate to what you're also putting into the piece. But I feel like today, less and less people are thinking about the resale value because they realize that it's not about that. Like it's the sentimental value linked to it.
No, and there's this old rule that so many of my girlfriends have told me about. They have to spend
3 times their salary.
3 times their salary, yeah. And you think, well, you could spend that on lab-grown diamonds because if you're selling stuff at you'll 20 grand.
Yeah, and I think you'll get something, like you'll get basically a bigger stone for like half the price. But the main thing is it has shifted. I think it's a very traditional way of thinking. I think maybe in the US it's still a thing, but in Europe it's not really a 3-month salary rule, but it depends.
No, I mean, I think that's tough, and that's a lot of pressure on anyone who's proposing.
Definitely.
But also you mentioned earlier, which I found really interesting. I assumed that lab-grown diamonds were all perfect.
Yeah.
Because people talk about size versus clarity, and that's what makes the value. But they're not all perfect diamonds, are they?
So like lab-grown diamonds also have their 4 C's. So they come in different colors, clarity, shapes. So yeah, they're not perfect. We basically replicate the mining environment. We don't create perfect stones. So they grow in the exact same way as they would under earth.
Yeah, because I think people kind of for some reason, having a few flaws in their diamonds.
Definitely.
I mean, I don't know anything about diamonds, but yeah, I think you're right. I think that the mindset needs to shift dramatically around it and come away from that idea of it's where the diamond has come from, because they're both diamonds.
Exactly.
It's still,
definitely,
whether it's a necklace, a bracelet, a ring, you're still being given a diamond.
Definitely.
It's still an incredibly special gift. You don't have to receive it through an unethical source and pay 3 times the amount that you actually need to be paying.
Definitely.
So you're right. I think we probably have a really long way to go in educating people. Do you see competitors cropping up for you around the place?
A bit, but not that many yet, in the bridal space at least.
And I think that probably is down to lack of knowledge.
Yeah, and I think a mix of things probably, but yeah, definitely knowledge. Traditional customers are not their customers yet, so some brands won't shift yet. It's getting there. Definitely, there's more and more players, but thankfully we're first one. So
yeah, and so you sell your online site, is that international?
Yeah, international. We ship worldwide, and then we have our London store.
Okay, and then so the ambition really is to
scale up retail.
Yeah. Does it scare you a bit because of what happened in COVID? The retail space was hit so hard.
No, I think honestly, and again, if you have a balance between online and offline, you'll always be able to manage it. I think the issue during COVID is a lot of people that were hit by the retail side of things is that they didn't have an online presence. It's important to have both.
Yeah. Do you think there's any... And I ask everyone this. Do you think there are any key characteristics that an entrepreneur has that makes them a good entrepreneur?
I think hustling is key. You won't get things easily. You need to kind of chase. You need to go for it. There's no, you'll get no's and you'll just need to continue. So definitely having that mindset of being resilient is super important.
And probably the risk aspect of it as well.
Yeah. You don't think about the risk too much, just go for it. But
no, but I think it depends what time of life you're in. Obviously, you were young, you started with your best friend, you didn't have children yet. Exactly. When I speak to a lot of female entrepreneurs who are kind of already in, with a family life, there are more things to consider and they're a bit more concerned. So I think it's great to be
young. And do it when you're young.
Exactly. Although I've had young female entrepreneurs have come on and said people think we're too young, they don't really trust us. Yeah. And then people who are sort of further along had their children there. It's difficult. Course. It's really hard to have kids.
I think it's never easy anyway. So there's never a good time.
No.
But it depends person to person, what works for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And do you think you might not know the answer to this one. If you look in the future at opening more and more retail stores, can you fund that via sales or will you need to raise more investment?
Ideally, we don't want to raise more, we'll see.
You want to keep as much equity. Yeah, exactly. I think there's this big trend around we've raised Series A, B, C, D. But the other side that people don't think about is that yes, you've raised that, but then you've given away more and more and more and more shares.
Definitely.
Which...
Definitely
isn't ideal.
No.
You want to keep as much for yourself as possible.
Definitely.
Okay, totally. And is there any advice that you can give, general advice for, it's called She Did That. So let's go for female entrepreneurs. Any general advice you could give to a female entrepreneur? Maybe they're in the place you were at. They're in their job. They have this hunger to start their own business.
I would say... definitely look at the market opportunity, but don't dig too far off, in a way, don't have it all planned, just go for it, start and then improve.
Yeah.
But know that there is demand for it. That's the most important for sure, but just do it.
Okay. All right. Good advice. Any celebrities on the radar that you're trying to target?
Always. No one specific, but always, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sure you're going to absolutely smash it. It's a super exciting time for you.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to buy one of your pieces as well.
Thank you so much.
You've changed my mindset over lab-grown diamonds. It actually makes me think, do you know what? Maybe I would.
Yeah.
If I ever got engaged.
I hope so.
Yeah. I've definitely changed my stance on it. So
I hope so.
It's food for thought. And yeah, congratulations of all of your successes, particularly your recent success on Dragon's Den. And I can't wait to see you grow and flourish.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
That's all right.